Um, okay, so we are going to move now on to the mantis beings. Okay, now if you go on the internet or and you research, if you Google mantis beings, you get a lot of people's experiences. Okay, and they generally seem to be accepted as a very old race, very wise. They're known as the caretakers of children. They're benevolent. Now, Ted, you're saying something completely different about them. So I think we should start off firstly. When did you first encounter a mantis being?
I didn't know that I had encountered a mantis being until uh, under hypnosis with Barbara Barthlick. Uh, we reviewed an incident in my life in which uh, I encountered them in close proximity. I was on a craft where they were, and now I did describe to Barbara uh, on that very first, for those of you who have listened to all the podcasts or maybe read Masquerade of Angels, uh, the very first alien abduction hypnotic regression that we did, that was brought out in the cotton field here in Alabama when I was a little boy and taken, and in that process I had been cloned. Now there were creatures there that I saw on this large mothership where they had taken me. I did see some mantis creatures there and describe them, but I was not in a close encounter with them. I just saw them. That was the first time. Now, the next time was very vivid, very realistic, in which I had a up close and personal encounter with them, and that was a different regression. So those are the only two times.
Okay, and as far as them being known as caretakers for children, you've got a completely different view of what they're doing to the children, which is what?
Well, you got to understand the nature of these aliens. We're dealing with non-human entities, but we as humans want to make them act and think like humans because we can relate to them better. And I deal with people, talk with people all the time who are very pro-alien. They really think and feel that they're here for our best interest, but yet I have not run across any evidence that makes me feel that's true. Uh, all the encounters that I've had with them have not been positive. They've done some positive things to trick me into thinking they're positive, but I learned that these were lies and deceptions. Okay, so we have to get to the fact, to the nature of these mantis. Now, a small, tiny insectoid mantis there that you find on a bush by your house or in the forest, what does it do? Uh,
They're
just because it's been uh, genetically created to be human size or bigger, taller, doesn't change the nature of what it actually is. And it may have been, its brain may have been genetically improved so that it has rational, the ability to think, create, and act uh, outside and beyond the insectoid position in its natural state. But that doesn't mean that its true character has changed. And it's still an insect. It still behaves like an insect, and it feeds on flesh of other creatures.
yeah,
And
birds, lizards, anything that they can
right,
get their hands on.
everything else that it can get. And I witnessed this on a ship where I was. I saw a craft come in with children, babies. I'm gonna say they probably the oldest one was maybe 4. They were 4 down to toddlers, diapers, and they were brought in and they were taken off of this circular round craft onto a conveyor belt, and they were, now the children were kind of uh I'm not going to say totally paralyzed because they were moving their arms and legs, but the children were somewhat like in a coma. It's not like they had their true faculties mentally. They were just sitting there like they were in La La Land. But they rode this conveyor belt inside a compartment, and this is gross and this is horrible, and but I this story has to be told. People have to know what we're dealing with. This was a processing center where these children were being prepared for food to feed these mantis. And they were taken in there, and all of their extremities, their arms, legs, their heads were all removed by a laser knife type thing. They just seared right across it and it dropped off. And these parts of the bodies were packed in containers to be sent somewhere else. I'm not sure. I didn't witness where they were taken. But then the torso cavity was split open. It was put on continuing this conveyor belt, and it went down onto what looked like, it wasn't, but the closest thing I can say to describe it was like a conveyor belt, but it rode very slowly as if it was like a buffet line. And these tall mantis, and there was bunches of them, they were feeding on the organs inside the cavity of these remains.
Oh
Now,
my
is this gross
gosh.
and sick enough? But I saw it. I even told Barbara, I said, my God, it looked like they were eating into a big baked potato. And now, when I've told this story, people say, you're just trying to horrify everybody. Well, I've been quiet for years. I didn't want to tell people what I knew to protect all of you listening. This is one of the reasons I say the government has gone to extreme measures to make sure that we don't know what's really happening because they can't fix it. And I think one of the main reasons, and I'm not taking up for the government, but I think I can see, what would I have done? What would you have done in that position to have recovered that craft at Roswell and found such remains inside that told them probably what was going on, but there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop it. Of course, they lied to the whole world. They didn't want the panic that
Right.
this would cause. And now here I am coming along all these years later, and I'm telling you, people listening, this horrible story, but I saw it, and now I have to back it up with the fact that after I recovered from the shock that I went through of reliving this experience and witnessing what I saw, and believe me, people, it took me some time. I was an absolute, the old expression, basket case. I was an emotional wreck, and I couldn't even work for days. It left me mentally, spiritually, and physically crippled to have relived this event and saw what I saw, and the heartbreak I experienced from it. And Barbara then comes back later after I'm able to talk with her more about this, because momentarily I had told her, I said, this is it. I'm not doing any more regressions. I can't handle it.
Yeah.
And she came back later and she said, Ted, and she got out some records with no names on it. And she had, I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to say more or less 7 cases of other people that she had worked on that had witnessed the very same thing.
Did you say 7?
I think there was around 7 cases that she had done hypnotic regressions with before me, some of them several years, that had witnessed this basically the same thing.
Right. And Ted, when did you discover this knowledge? Was it back in 1994 with Carla, or was it?
This was after Carla's death. Barbara
Right.
and I continued working, but I had kind of dropped off the public trail.
Yeah.
My life had been threatened. I knew what had happened to Carla. Uh, Barbara had been threatened, and she wanted me to continue this work because she said that I had the ability to open up and see these things in a very true and realistic and explainable way, where others had been lost and mixed with a lot of confusion and screen memories and what have you, and it wasn't altogether clear. So she thought that she needed me to really enhance this work. And Barbara, being such a dear and precious friend to Carla and I both, that I kept working with her. I worked with her all these years that I was silent, but we were still doing work. I would go to Tulsa whenever I could and stay a few days, and we would do a few regressions. And then I would come home and try to emotionally get over what I'd seen for a long time. It's been a very heartbreaking experience to me over these years.
Um. So was this at Dulce? This
And
Mantis buffet?
I don't know where it was.
No. Okay. So when did the event happen? What year?
I was taken. I was taken out of my home, and it happened when I was in Amarillo, Texas. When I was living there, I lived there 3 years, and it was an abduction that happened there, and I don't know where I was taken. Now, Amarillo is, as the crow flies, is not that far to Dulce.
Yeah.
Maybe
Okay.
by car, maybe like about a 4.5 hour drive by car from Amarillo to Dulce. So it was in that area. It's possible, but I don't know for sure. I just know that I was taken there, and they did things to my body. They put headphones on my ears. I think they were trying to program me for something, and maybe they did. I'm not sure what they did to me. I just remember the headphones being put in a chair that looked like a dental chair, and it laid back, and they did different things to my ears, to my eyes. They took blood. They had, like I said, the headphones on my head, and then in the process, uh, of being removed from that room where those things were happening, we went into an area where I was to get back on a UFO to be brought, I returned, I'm assuming, back to my bedroom. And that's where I saw another UFO where these children were being brought out of this UFO on that conveyor belt. And then it's like, I don't know if they did it or if there was a friendly force of aliens in charge. I'm not sure, but I remember I suddenly found myself in the room where the feeding was taking place. And
Jesus Christ.
and that's the story of it. I don't have any better details, but that's what I saw. And Barbara confirmed that I was not the only one that had ever seen this situation.
And Ted,
So
why
yes, they're the caretakers of the children. Yes, they certainly are. You can see that deception and that lie. They're insectoids and they're behaving like insectoids. Why do we expect anything different out of a mantis?
Yeah. And Ted, why children?
Well, I would say that one cavity of a child's chest with the stomach, the heart, the liver, everything, that's a meal.
Okay.
That's a meal. A human size would be maybe, in my opinion, bigger than what they need. It might be a waste. And I can assure you from what I've seen, these aliens, these entities waste absolutely nothing.
Mm.
They have creatures of all kinds to feed on every part of the body. All the blood goes to the grays. Uh, the children, we just discussed where that goes. Uh, anyway, just think about it. I don't need to describe it for you. You can imagine. You
Yeah.
can imagine. And they're not clean. Uh, the very putrid smell in these UFOs. They're not clean at all. They're nasty. They poop in the floors, and then they have another insect like big roaches or whatever that come and eat it all and clean it up. That's the way it gets cleaned up.
Ugh. UFOs are often described as hospital-like. Excuse me. UFOs are often described as hospital-like. Very clean, no rivets or anything, very smooth.
Well, now, when I was taken on that childhood abduction out of the cotton field, the one where I was cloned, I was taken to a mothership.
Yeah.
Now, the mothership had human workers in there. It was clean and it did not smell bad. I'm talking about these small craft that are like the taxis and
Right.
the operators, these insects that operate it.
Yeah, okay.
Uh, and I saw it all for what it really was. And I went into shock. I was screaming, I was yelling. It took three, maybe four people to hold me down because I had become totally hysterical
Yeah. The
because everything that I believed in was shattered.
yeah. And also, Ted, uh it, I know there's experiences that you've had where you've seen aliens that you were never regressed on and that you were always remembered without the aid of hypnosis.
I remember when I lived in the apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was in bed, I was asleep, and an alien reptile dressed in like robes that a king would wear came through a fog into that room. And I remembered that consciously without having to look under it uh, in hypnosis.
Yeah.
And also, that was another time, one of the most frightening experiences in my life.
Yeah. One of the abilities the aliens have is they can manipulate human memory. There's Carla once said that they would implant screen memories so that when the person is recounting this encounter with the beings, they might have a positive memory, and then but when you dive deeper through hypnosis, you find that what actually happened is completely different usually, and it's your typical abduction experience where a person is taken and medical procedures performed on them. Uh, they take either sperm from men or eggs from women, and they didn't have a very positive experience at all. But do you know why you're able to kind of see past these screen memories with the aid of hypnosis?
Well, Barbara helped me. Of course, when I first was going under hypnosis for the very first few times, I ran into a lot of screen memories, and I would talk about uh, things that look quite benevolent.
Yeah.
And of course, Barbara, with the expertise that this lady had, she knew without telling me, that this was probably false memories. Um, but it's like this, Stuart. If they don't cover these negative experiences with something sweet, eventually everybody's going to catch on. This is pretty horrible.
Yeah.
The way they protect themselves is to not let us know what really happened.
Yeah.
Like in the neighborhood abduction, when all of we neighbors were packed into that little small UFO,
Yeah.
uh, the overseer or the caretaker was a female human.
Interesting.
That's what we saw. But under hypnosis, I saw that it was actually one of the tall grays.
The tall grays. Yeah.
Tall grays. But they wanted us to see this human figure, and that's what we would remember if we remembered anything, because they don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to really know what they're doing to us.
Yeah. Does
And another thing, and let me say this in all honesty and sincerity from my heart. I say, if they were on the up and up, they would have landed long time ago, and back in biblical days or whatever, because we have evidence that they were around. They would have been doing uh, wonderful things in their involvement with humanity.
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
fact that they cover everything up with deception and lies, what does that tell you about their character?
Yeah. I always thought like the best thing they could do for us is really just leave us alone. I it's sort of like in Star Trek where they have the prime directive, this
Well,
kind of non-interference in
well,
unadvanced cultures.
I understand what you're saying. However, uh, we need to think about the possibility that we are part of this system.
Right.
We are part of it.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we're going to have a hard time accepting, that we are a part of the whole system.
Yeah.
That otherwise they would not be so interested in us.
Yeah, they're very interested in us.
Well, yeah, they are very interested in us. So we are a part of it, but finding the reasons we're a part of it and accepting that reality may be quite difficult for humanity.
Oh, it definitely will when human beings start to discover that we're not the top of the food chain anymore.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
But yeah, maybe we should move on from there. So the Greys, I just want to bring the Greys to people's attention. As my understanding is that there's two different types of Greys. Okay, there's the tall ones and the small ones. There's also people report them in different colors. I don't know if that's other species or if it's just these kind of screen memories that people are remembering. But from what I can tell, and Ted, would you agree that there's two types? There's the tall ones and the small ones.
I have seen both.
Yeah, the small ones are about 4 foot high. The tall ones maybe 6 or 7 feet.
Yeah, somewhere like that. True.
Abductees have described the smaller ones as being more robotic, like artificial intelligence, and they seem to be getting controlled by the taller ones. Is that correct?
Uh, I'm not absolutely sure.
Yeah.
I haven't seen enough to where I could pass judgment on that as to how accurate that would be or not. I know I have seen both, and my feeling is that they are created, manufactured, a cross between some type of insect and human.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, that's just my inner feeling, and I have no reason to dispute that if anyone uh, agrees or disagrees. It's just my feeling. I had uh, I had an email from someone last week also that asked me uh, how or why did I stop doing psychic readings? Why did I suddenly put all that away and just kind of became a recluse? And so I want to clarify that. Uh, when the when Masquerade of Angels was released in I think at the end of November 1994, shortly afterwards, I got a very threatening phone call. I had two grandchildren, babies practically, living with me at the time. And I got this phone call during the night. The voice was somewhat human mechanical. And what I mean by that is I had listened to some recordings of some spirits that were being channeled through some people here in the United States. And listening closely to that voice, it didn't sound quite normal. It almost sounded a little bit mechanical. And this voice that threatened me called and told me if I valued the safety of my grandchildren, I would put a lip on the information that I have, or put a zipper on it. I think that's the word they used. And so I took that very seriously.
Yeah.
And I know that Barbara had been threatened before. Carla had been threatened. And in fact, Carla had the Men in Black come to her house. And being under hypnosis, I had seen for the first time that aliens were involved in the psychic readings that I was doing for people, and that it wasn't all just me or my ability.
Yeah.
They had been playing with my ability to read people. And I say this to those of you who are out there that are psychic. If psychics could come up with all the answers, wouldn't that be wonderful? We would solve every murder mystery there is, but yet we never get answers to those things to any degree. So there is a force at work here that that tells a psychic, or telling myself, what they wanted us to pass on to the person sitting in front of us listening to our reading. And when I saw that reality, it soured me on the whole thing. And I just thought, this is not fair. This is not right. I was very unhappy. I was very hurt. And so I stopped doing readings. I totally stopped doing it, and I still don't do readings. However, if I get anything of importance to pass on to someone that I'm talking to or corresponding with, I always do that if I feel like it is information that is beneficial to that person and helpful in some way.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that I recently read this article, and I can't remember the name right now, but it was a study done on people. And Ted, I sent it to you actually. It was a study done on people who had psychic ability. They actually had their brains were wired differently in a certain part of their brain, and they think it acts like an antenna for these this intuition to come in. Um, you know what, folks? I will link that study in the description. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on. So, do you think it's possible that these beings have manipulated our genetics, changed the format of these people's brains, where they can kind of control them, kind of direct them where their readings go. All these psychics.
Yes, they do it in a very subtle manner, so as not to have the psychic aware that they are channeling information into their brains to pass on to these people. It's very subtle.
Now, a lot
I never suspected,
yeah.
never until I saw it at work under hypnosis.
Now, a lot of psychics who are listening to this are going to be pretty annoyed, I imagine.
Oh, I'm sure they're going to hate me for saying that, but I'm sorry. Hey, that's what I saw. That's what I experienced, and right now, that's what I think.
Yeah.
If it changes later, I will be the first to say, "Hey, I believe this differently today."
Yeah,
but
yeah.
right now, that's the way I see it.
Did I miss anything, Ted, with the abduction?
Well, let me add this. The procedure you're talking about is very, very common, where people are taken out of the bedroom, they're taken into a craft, their clothes are removed, they're medically examined, they're punched, probed, all kind of things done to them, and they're told that they're trying to learn about humanity. They're very interested in us and our species, and they thank the abductee for their assistance in allowing them to do this. And if people have memory much about it at all, they're quite pleased that they helped some interplanetary species who's trying to improve themselves by studying humanity. And don't you think, since they've been around since biblical days and probably prior to that, and that people have been abducted worldwide by the millions, that don't you think that that's they know all they need to know, that there's something else going on here that they're covering up? And that's what I would like the listeners to start thinking about.
Yeah, like you would think they would have more than enough genetic material.
Oh, they do. And as far as these fetuses, there are select females, human females that have been selected as hatcheries, you might say. They impregnate them, and then they come and they take the eggs, or what, fertilized eggs or whatever, and is that okay for us to be used that way? It's not okay with me.
Absolutely not. No.
Where, as I said to a lady one time who was so happy about being an egg hatcher for these beings, and she thought she was really doing humanity a great service. And I looked at her and I said, did you give them permission to do this? Oh, yes, they said I did. I said, well, did you see it in writing? Show me the contract. I said, they're feeding your brain, making you happy that you're producing something for them that could be quite sinister. We need more information about this.
Yeah.
There's too much hidden agenda in all of this for us to just lay down all arms and say it's okay that we just surrender to this. They can do whatever they want to, which really they're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
But they want to keep us in the dark. They don't want us to really know what they're doing to us and why. And that is something that needs to come out to people.
Now, Ted, I spoke to you before about the Disclosure Project, Dr. Stephen Greer, and the protocols for human initiated contact. Now, I know it works. Okay, I've done it. I've seen the ships. It was taught to me by a group of people in Australia, and I think it's fantastic. But I also just want to tell the listeners who might be doing that I think it's important that we don't lose ourselves in this, that we approach this phenomenon from a human point of view, that I can hear a baby.
No, that was my kitty cat wanting out.
Oh, that's your cat. But I think it's important that we don't lose ourselves in this, that we keep some sovereignty, and that we we should be a bit wary about this because we don't know anything about the politics out there. That what these beings are really up to, why they're here.
We need more information.
Yeah,
I don't see that it's uh I don't think we need to all go to the edge of town and put up banners and flowers welcoming welcoming this force into our lives until we have more truthful information. There are too many untruths
yeah,
uh, to me. And if it turns out that that they really are great and wonderful, and they're going to save us all, hey, I'm appreciative.
yeah,
But I need more information before I can say that.
yeah. That would be the same for me. Like I do love the idea, and I do like that these beings are making contact. But
Mhm.
just if you look at the history of the UFO phenomenon as a whole, it's always been deception, misdirection. Um, like we've been looking at this, or people have been looking at this for 70 years. And to be honest with you, like the research that came out of the mid 90s, that's kind of like all the information we're still working on today. Like there's nothing new has been discovered. Like we haven't discovered what the new agenda is or anything like that. Ted,
I agree with you what you're saying. I'd like to point this out. For those of you that have read Masquerade, go back and pay attention to the chapter that deals with the abduction when I was in the cotton fields at my grandmother's. Uh, Look at the fact that in that abduction, I saw that I was placed on a stage in front of a lot of creatures, and that there was a group of little small aliens that came out. And then there was another group that were hooded that came out. And why was I assigned a set of two groups that were opposite from each other? And what does that mean?
that's interesting.
And what does that mean? Because it's very important in understanding this phenomena and what it's really all about. What does that say? You've got a group of good aliens. You got a group of little fiery-eyed, hooded, bad aliens, and me, the human. Both are assigned to me. Sometimes good angels and bad angels. And by the way, another word for angel is agent. Another word for agent is person, you know. Uh, so good angels, bad angels work together to achieve a goal.
Right.
That's very powerful in this phenomena. Everyone, please pay attention to that.